Sylvia, Venerable.
Sylvia and Honu. I'm Venerable Honu. Hi.
And who are you? Who are you, honey child? I know Honu, but who are you with the blonde hair?
This is Sylvia.
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 Sylvia. Thank you, Sylvia. Okay. Happy to see you, darling. Happy to see you all. Okay. Is there no plan? I just got to talk, right? That's the plan.
Honu. I'm Venerable Honu. Hi.
Who are you? Who's talking to me? I can't understand.
Honey child.
Huh? I don't understand who's talking to me.
Hi.
Thank you. Now I can hear you. Good.
Yes. That's sorry. I was managing.
Now you better introduce me and welcome everybody. That's your job, not mine.
Yeah, so it's Rona here. Hello.
Oh, here's Rona. Where's Rona?
Yeah, I'm here. Look, I'm
Oh,
waving.
Rona, now I can see you now. My
yeah,
God.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, Rona.
So it's good to see you again. We had Amy Miller last week, but
Wonderful.
you're back by popular request.
Good. So go on, Rona. Some people we might not know each other, some of us.
Oh, okay. Well, this is Venerable Robina Courtin, a very long member of our community and a great follower and friend of Lama Zopa, and once upon a time Lama Yeshe, I think. So, and she's been talking to us in the past few weeks about all our various worries in this present circumstance and how to try and keep sane. So we hope she'll give us some more insights into that this evening and
So what
answer your questions.
Good, Rona. So what did we talk about in particular 2 weeks ago? Does anybody remember? No?
Karma.
Was it?
Yes. Oh no, oh no, that was 3 weeks ago.
Oh God. Okay, Barbara. Okay. Well, we'll
Okay,
see
Barbara. So what did we talk about last week then? 2 weeks ago then?
Oh.
What did Amy talk about? What did Venerable Amy talk about?
Self-compassion and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe what we can talk about. Yesterday we were talking which center was it? In Santa Fe. We had a thing on Santa Fe and it was about how we embellish reality, which of course is all Buddha's discussions about wisdom. So I think it's a really good topic. Let's look at why we go potty, why we lose the plot, why we go up and down like yo-yos, why we freak out, why we make mountains out of molehills, even if they are really big mountains. What is it? So why is it we lose the plot? Why is it we can't keep sane? And that really is the whole point. You've got the compassion wing and you have the wisdom wing. Okay, well, let's just look at the wisdom wing a bit from another perspective. So I want to stick a little prayer as always first. We've got to start in the right direction, like our, setting our motivation, as all the Tibetans would put it. But the way we might say it is state our purpose. Why are we here together for this, 90 minutes, whatever we've got today. So we're going to listen to Buddha's approach to all these things. Buddha's approach, this marvelous Indian man from 2,500 years ago, and all the marvelous practices of his views since then, their approach to how to not lose the plot, to keep sane in a crazy world. Yeah, how to develop the wisdom wing, in other words. We're going to do that. And so we're going to do that so we can take tools from it so we can use it. Don't just hear it as interesting ideas, but listen to it as advice. This is the point. And if there's even 1% of what we discussed today that is useful, then we put that into practice. That's fantastic. So, and not only are we going to try and develop the wisdom wing for our own sake, because we are the recipient of the benefits, but it's so that we can be qualified to help others. This is really clear. And to see the relationship between this is really important. To see the definite relationship between wisdom and compassion. It might not be evident to us, but let's really make that clear, Okay, we're going to sit here for this reason, to take tools to help us develop this, to do this. And I'll sing a little prayer. We sing it in Tibetan. It's expressing this idea. The second 2 lines at least, anyway. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chernyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chernyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi Dagi Chunyen Gipa Sonam Ki, Drola Penche Sangi Drupa Sho. Okay, so what does it mean we embellish? What does it mean we embellish reality? It sounds kind of abstract and kind of. Can you turn your thing off, Rona? Rona? Can someone tell Rona to turn her thing off? Is she there, Sylvia?
I was off.
Is
Now
it
I'm off again?
Yeah, it looks like you're on again. I can hear you. Are we off now? Okay, darling. Wonderful. Okay, so what does it mean we embellish reality? That sounds very abstract, doesn't it? But this is like exactly what Buddha's saying. So as we mentioned, you know, one way we can describe Buddhism is really a method for getting happy and stopping suffering. And that's something that sounds very delicious. We all want that. It's also a method for, it's a system of ethics. And we can kind of see the benefit of ethics, but we're not sure sometimes what's the relationship, you know, to happiness. We would never think there's a relationship to happiness between ethics, but absolutely for the Buddha, there's no question. But also Buddhism is a method for stopping ignorance and getting wisdom. Now that sounds pretty abstract. Who wants to get wisdom? We all want happiness, definite. Wisdom, we're not sure, you know. So we really got to see what this word means. It sounds very nice to have wisdom. What does Buddha mean by it? So the long-term result, the long-term wisdom, when we hear about the wisdom teachings in Buddhism, that's what it's referring to. All the teachings about dependent arising and emptiness. And of course, it's really, you got to squeeze your brain, as Lama Yeshe says, you know. So what's that got to do with, so how do we apply that in daily life? Well, what's interesting, what's powerful, I think, Rona, your mic is still on. Rona. No. Well, somebody's mic is, I'm being a policeman here, I'm sorry. Okay, never mind, whatever. Okay, so so how do we apply this in daily life and try to see the logic of this so that we can see why we suffer? So of course, as we've all talked, we all know very well when bad things happen like now and you're losing your job and it's serious and you're completely worried about your children, your family, when some people are having the most appalling suffering now. And this always sounds pretty brutal. It's very powerful to try and understand what tools we've got. What tools have we got? So as we all know, Shantideva or somebody, I don't know who it was, but there's a general saying, isn't there, that if we can change something, hey, please change it. How marvelous. But what if we can't? Is a real way to put it. What if we can't? And that's the real point. This is the real point. And this is what makes it difficult. And somehow we sort of feel, well, what do you mean I can't change anything? So I'm supposed to be happy when bad things happen? Well, yeah, Buddha's got all these techniques that show us that that's possible. This is the point. And that's the actual wisdom wing. That's the wisdom wing, you know, working on your mind in this very specific way. But the key thing to try and understand is to see
not on my most stressed out day.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah, that's easy. Okay, so how do we embellish things and what does this mean? When we have this saying, don't we know very well, our mummies would tell us we're making mountains out of molehills. So when you're a little girl and your sister looked at you the slightly wrong way or took the wrong thing at the wrong time and you have a total mental breakdown, we know that, think of it. When you're running like you make a beeline for mummy, looking up into her eyes like as if the world has collapsed. And she might give you a hug and say, it's all right, darling, but you are making a mountain out of a molehill. Well, because we don't want to know about that, because we believe at that moment that the immense disaster that we think has happened, we really do believe it has happened. We really do believe the world has collapsed. But we know even as a child, 5 minutes later, you calm down and you look at the same situation and suddenly it doesn't look as bad as it did. We know this. No one has to prove this to us, but it's difficult to look at it and take responsibility for it because we somehow think, oh, well, anger is natural, panic is natural, stress is natural. When things go wrong, when you lose your job, when your husband leaves you, when bad things happen, it is natural. It is natural to have a panic attack. It is natural to get angry. Well, Buddha agrees, of course it's natural, meaning that we all do it. But what I think is truly fascinating, if you think about it, when we say it's natural to have anger, it's natural to have a mental breakdown, it's natural to have panic when things go wrong, what we mean is that you'd be unnatural if you didn't respond that way. So in that sense, when we say it's natural, that underneath, it's a huge kind of sense of, it's, you know, of course I'm going to freak out. Look what happened to me. Of course I will freak out. And what we're saying is, I don't have a choice. What we're saying is, I'm allowed to freak out, but it's not my fault. I'm allowed to freak out. It's not my fault. I'm allowed to be depressed. It's not my fault. I'm allowed to be angry. And this is hard analysis to do. It's not like, but we really got to hear this. So what the Buddha's analysis is this, you know, we need to understand the mind, the way the mind works. And Buddha's view of the mind, as we know, is so precise, and it's so utterly experiential. It's so utterly direct. When we go to our therapists, we factor in the genes, the DNA, the mummy, the daddy, the events, the things, all the complexities of the outside world as major players in our suffering. And that's not wrong. Buddha doesn't disagree with that either. But we put emphasis on those things, and that is what causes us to therefore say, but it's not my fault, I'm allowed to be angry. No wonder I'm depressed. Look what happened to me. No wonder I've lost the plot. Look what happened. There's something very powerful in that statement. And that's the Buddha's approach is, that's true. Look at the world, it is appalling. Look at the suffering that people experience. There is no question, it's appalling. But he says, you know what, folks? You can change your mind. And this is exactly what he's saying, but it's so shocking to hear it. It seems like it's not, what do you mean? We kind of feel outraged. What do you mean I should change my mind? It's not my fault. What do you mean I should change my anger? It's my boyfriend's fault. So we kind of keep very stuck. And this works at a very subtle level. This is the voice of ego, Buddha says. This is the voice of the misconceptions in our mind, you know, that embellish. So let's look at this idea of embellishing, because it's not how we think in our culture. So to understand that, we've got to get a very clear, a relatively clear understanding of the way that the mind works, of the contents of our mental consciousness, you know. So the contents of our mental consciousness, Buddha very simply classifies into 3 groups, and there's no 4th group. And this is kind of outrageous. I mean, we know in one day you've got so many thoughts and so many feelings and emotions. If you could track every one, you'd have 1,000 pages. You know, really, it's true, because the mind works so continuously, unbroken, isn't it? And so Buddha classifies all of those thoughts and feelings and emotions into these 3 groups. On the face of it, almost simplistic, you know. There are those that are neurotic, delusional, disturbing, distressing, and they are the ones that exaggerate. They are the ones that embellish. Literally, that's their key function. And that is the cause of our suffering. Now, of course, this is abstract. We don't think this way at all. No way. First, we don't even think, as Lama Zopa puts it, pretty shocking, the vast majority of all humans on this planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. Hear that statement, that the vast majority of all humans on the planet have absolutely no idea that whatever goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. This is beyond shocking. And you would of course add to that, not only do we not know that what goes on in our mind plays any role in our lives, we do not know what goes on in our mind, period. So I mean, this for the Buddha is the most intense, unbelievable suffering. In other words, we're so completely disconnected from ourselves. We are very familiar. We're very sophisticated in our knowledge about the outside world. If I'm angry, I can, you know, and Fred looked at me the wrong way, or he punched me in the nose or whatever, and he did do it, which is not appropriate. I will give you a detailed, precise description of everything Fred did and said. I will not forget it. It's in my mind from 37 years ago. I will not forget the details. Thank you, Robina. Now you've described Fred. Now tell me about your anger. And I'll say, oh, I just did. No, you didn't. You described Fred through the lenses of your anger. Your anger described Fred, but we can't hear that because we don't think we have a view. We don't think we even have we know we have thoughts and feelings, but as far as we're concerned, they've been injected into me by Fred when he came angry. He literally made me angry. That's how we think. That's our analysis. And not only do we think that, we think when Mummy made me, that she gave me anger. So of course we can't take responsibility. How can we, when even Mummy made us and gave me anger? So of course it's not my fault. I didn't ask to get born. So the painful way that we try to deal with our minds, and if we're attempting to be Buddhist, and it's a long process, and it's not overnight that we're good at this, the main pain is this stripping away of this kind of stripping away of this sense of entitlement, this sense it's not my fault I'm allowed to be angry. It's not my fault I'm allowed to be depressed. Look what happened to me. You've got no idea what I went through, we'll say. You've got no idea what I went through. It's always this implication that somehow it's happened to me, not I did it. It happens to me. We feel like these victims of good luck and bad luck in life. That's our view. That's the philosophical view. And the Buddha would say that's a function of the root neurosis in this first category of states of mind, the one such that when we've uprooted it, when we realize emptiness, the suffering radically just begins to disappear. This is the root. And the function of this one is the main one that does the embellishing. And what this one does, and it's called ego grasping, colloquially, the root delusion. Buddha says we've got 84,000 distinct mental problems, 84,000 distinct mental illnesses. That word, in Tibetan or in Sanskrit, klesha, which is translated beautifully as affliction. Well, what it is referring to is a mental affliction. And what's a mental affliction? A better word, a more modern word than affliction is illness. A mental illness. This is shocking to us. If we think we're mentally ill, we're on the further end of the spectrum of really serious problems. Phew, I'm not in that group. I've got some depression and anxiety, but I ain't mentally ill, baby. Buddha says, sorry, babies, we are all mentally ill. And that's not being a cliche. That's a literal truth in the way Buddha's describing. So this root mental illness of the 84,000, Buddha summarized all these 84,000 down into 3, which is a very interesting little kind of presentation. The 3 poisons, we know them very well. The 3 toxic emotions. The root one, the mother of them all, ego grasping, colloquial, for this ignorance, this primordial mistake, primordially deeply instinctive assumption in the bones of our being of me as a concrete, solid, set in stone, separate me-ness. I mean, there's just simple words, and its function is its nature is to grasp. And then it gives rise to this powerful bottomless pit of emotional hunger that runs the show every millisecond, called attachment. Constantly dissatisfied, constantly searching for something to make me happy. And then when it gives rise to the third one, when it doesn't get what it wants, and that's the panic attack of aversion on the spectrum of violent anger, annoyed, irritated, all the way down to depression. There's a spectrum. We live in these, and day to day, attachment and aversion, that's it. And they all give, these 3 are all, the other 83,997 are rooted in these 3. As Lingua Rinpoche said, 21,000 of those are rooted in ignorance, 21,000 are rooted in attachment, 21,000 are rooted in aversion, and the other 21,000 are rooted in all 3. It's a really elaborate map of the mind. So, the key function of this ego grasping, it's the main one when we discuss do the wisdom teachings and talk about emptiness. That's when we hear about how it embellishes, how it exaggerates, how it distorts, how it's not a valid description of reality. But if we go soon, if we look into, if we're in the Lam Rim and we're going to a junior school, high school, university level, university and then postgraduate, the process of this path, we look in the second scope of the Lam Rim, we start to get into our mind, we start to become a Buddhist. We first control our body and speech at the basic level. Now we begin to look at our mind. We can start to learn about the branch delusions, attachment and aversion, and all the others. They also embellish. They also embellish. They all have the same function. But mainly when we do the wisdom teachings, we learn about how they embellish. So what does this mean? Attachment embellishes something. Anger embellishes. How do they make mountains out of molehills? It's a powerful statement. Our mummies knew this. There's so many of these little kind of cute sayings that Buddha would totally agree with. This is just common knowledge, because remember, Buddha's not a creator. He doesn't make up this stuff. He doesn't have copyright on it. This is reality he's describing. This is experience, So how does attachment embellish, exaggerate, and clearly, crucially, in the case of when bad things happen, how does depression or anger, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum of the state of mind called aversion, which is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants, how do they embellish? How do they make mountains out of molehills? And this sounds very cruel. Like I said, when really bad things happen, to hear that I can change my mind in relation to them is a very shocking idea. A couple of weeks ago, one of the talks we had, and a person discussing the problems in her life, and this is all of us the same, and one of her problems was this person upstairs on the, clomping with his feet all day on the ceiling. So we know these things. I mean, we don't have to worry about we don't have to think about being raped or tortured to think about bad things happening. Little baby things like your husband eating too loudly, the noise outside, the person's, you know, feet on the roof above. We all know we don't need to be raped to know that we get unhappy. Little baby things make us unhappy, you know, and that's why we should deal with the baby things first. Don't wait till you lose your job. Don't wait for COVID-19 to come. Don't wait for everything to collapse before you start looking at your mind. That's Buddha's great advice. So we have to start looking at the baby things that happen so we're prepared for the bigger ones. So, you know, then we were discussing this problem that she's had. She said she's had it for years. Person upstairs clomping their feet, and even when she moves house, they still clomp their feet. She's got some, you know, whatever it is, karma to have people clomping their feet on her ceiling. And then so we looked at the various options of how to handle it. Wear earphones. But how about we discuss, and this is, we all know, straight from the Mahayana teachings of transforming problems into happiness. How about starting to call it a good, starting to stop seeing it as a problem and call it good? And she was shocked, completely shocked. And we all are. I mean, she laughed, in fact. And that's exactly, of course, how we genuinely respond. We try to be all holy. We read the transforming problem texts. We read the 8 verses and we say them with such holy work. Even if someone murders me, I will try to blah, blah, blah. Even if someone accuses me, I will try to have a happy mind. We love reading the nice verses in nice poetic form. But as soon as a roof a foot above our head clomps, you mean see it as good? What are you talking about? So what does that mean? Why are we shocked? Why are we shocked by that? Because Buddha's saying, all these neuroses, one function is they embellish, but the other one, the tragic one, the worst one, the one that's terrifying, which is what makes practice so painful, is they're set in stone. Something is good and something is bad by definition. Buddha's telling us, finally, that everything that we experience, as Lama puts it, everything that we experience appears back to us. As they say in the Tibetan text, or as we might say through the lenses of whatever's in your mind. But as Lama puts it, everything out there appears back to us in the aspect of whatever is in your mind. So if anger is in our mind, and what's anger? Aversion. And what's that? The response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. What's attachment? The junkie in us, every millisecond, frantically, like a junkie, desperate, frantic, hysterically frantic to get only the nice things. If we don't understand this attachment, we cannot understand anger. We can't, not possible, impossible. We have to understand attachment. And that's the frantic junkie in us, every millisecond, continuously, desperate to get only the nice things, second by second by second by second by second. That's it. That's our disease. That's our main disease. Now, it's so primordial, we just think it's normal behavior. We don't think of it as a problem until it doesn't get what it wants. And then when we don't get what we want, when each of us, to that friend, and we're all the same here, it's not pointing out anybody as being naughty, we're all the same. When that attachment, in that case for that particular person, doesn't get what it wants, which is the noise of somebody clomping above on your ceiling, instantly what arises is called aversion. So what's aversion? Aversion is, how dare that happen? This is ugly. I do not like this. This is not fair. Stop doing that. I do not want this. That's what aversion is saying. We all know this. This is how we suffer in daily life. Normal behavior. Who wants COVID-19? Nobody. It's called aversion. Who wants bad people to harm us? Nobody. It's called aversion. This is too shocking to hear because it sounds like it's blaming us. No, it's just recognizing our mind. And that's the brilliant skill that Buddha has. So depression, despair and depression are the internalized versions of this aversion. Anger is a volatile expression. Our anger is a volatile, obvious, identifiable one. How dare he do that to me? Depression, just internalize it, and then one day you can't get out of bed because you're inert. We have complete panic attacks. So basically we suffer because we have delusions. We don't suffer because we have love. We don't suffer because we have wisdom. We don't suffer because we have kindness and compassion. They make us happy. This is so brutal to speak so clearly like this. It's just too shocking to us, you know. So until we can recognize, no matter how bad the outside thing is, COVID-19, losing our job, the whole world collapsing, horrible politics, you name it. Until we can look at our mind and see what that response is and label it precisely and look into it, understand it, taste it, you know, have our hands in our own shit, as a friend of mine who's a therapist and a Buddhist said. That's when we're being our own therapist. And that's actual Buddhist practice. Junior school entry level grade 1, abiding by the laws of karma. That is Buddhist practice, very specific, but it's shared by anybody who lives in good ethics. A good Christian would live like this. A good Muslim, a good communist would not harm others. Your grandmother will say, don't harm others. That's universal. Buddha's got his own specific view of it, of course he has, but you don't become a Buddhist until you actually get to the next level where you now take this distinct presentation of Buddha's analysis of the mind, of how it functions. Not the brain, that's not his expertise. That's not his expertise. The brain is not his expertise. His expertise is the actual subjective, internal, cognitive process itself. That's the brilliant skill of Buddhist psychology. And that's when we begin to really work on ourselves. Changes come from this. When we start to work on our mind, you've got to control your body and speech first, there's no question, because they're the servants of your mind. But until we start working on the mind, until we start identifying attachment, identifying aversion, identifying either the anger or the depression, which are the expressions of aversion, we can't change, we won't change, you know. So this is tough. So of course, the powerful level of practice at the advanced level in the Mahayana, as Lama Zopa says, we have to learn to like problems like we like ice cream. I mean, this is like laughable for us. That's why the woman, you all laughed when the thought that she could possibly interpret the clomping feet on her ceiling as good. First of all, why are we so shocked? Why are we so shocked at that? Because we believe 1,000,000,000% in our interpretation. So this is leading us to this clear point that all these, what we call emotions, either profound depression when you're inert, panic attacks, raging anger, these emotions, that's, we call that, what we refer to as an emotion is when the body's involved. When the body's involved. When a person is called very unemotional, they don't express with their speech or their body anything. We have no idea what's going on in their mind. We don't care. They look just like unemotional. And so emotions for us are like everything. We think emotions are everything, you know, and what we mean by emotions is when our body's involved. Well, as far as Buddha is concerned, when the body starts to show symptoms like being inert in bed because it's depression, or screaming and shouting when you've got anger, that the trouble is that's only then that we notice we've got a problem. It's only, in other words, that's the wheels falling off. My analogy, you know, 120 miles an hour on the motorway, and you suddenly notice your wheels are falling off. Oh, my wheels are falling off. What will I do? We ask that question every day. I'm screaming at my boyfriend. What will I do? I'm inert in bed from depression. What will I do? I'm having a panic attack. What will I do? Our trouble is we have waited too late to ask the question because we've never heard of mechanics. We don't have mental mechanics. We have body mechanics. We have incredible things for our teeth and our bodies and health and nutrition. And the slightest indication of a slight pain in our knee, we rush off to the doctor, the nutritionist, the this and the that. We don't wait till your leg's falling off before you go to the damn doctor. You don't wait till your teeth are out of your mouth before you go to the dentist. But we do wait until it's too late about our mind, because that's our culture. That's modern psychology. Not being rude, it's just a fact. If you're blissfully happy in your relationship, meaning attachment's getting what it wants, and you go to your therapist, you'll say, shut up and go home and stop wasting my time. She wants you to come when the wheels are falling off. And that's what we think of as therapy. So we are demented. We wait till, no, and this is the point, we wait till way too late. When your wheels are falling off on the freeway, it is a complete disaster. There's very little you can do except damage control. And that's our problem. We wait till COVID-19 comes. We wait till we lose our job. We wait till boyfriend leaves us. We wait till we're inert in bed with depression to notice we've got a problem. It's just simply too late. And Buddha's incredible skill, which is implied by his methodology, implied by his analysis, is by getting some, first of all, controlling your body and speech. Control the servants of your mind, okay? Control the servants, which is your body and speech, and that's already a profound practice. Then you get to the next level and you start to get some shamatha. You can do that sooner if you like, concentration, which is the technique you need to enable you to even see what the hell is going on in your mind. And the real job is to see what the hell goes on in your mind, which is all these millions of thoughts and feelings and emotions, which are chaotic for us right now. We can't make head or tail of what's happening in our head until it hits the body. Oh, now I'm feeling something, we'll think. Well, it's just too late. And we think that in our culture because body is everything. Our experiences physically, what we call emotions, we think they're physical experiences. We think it's a physical experience. No, anger is not physical. Depression is not physical. Love is not physical. They are mental, and they just affect the body. That's all. And they're always affecting the body at a subtle level, like the wheels begin to wobble. We don't pay attention. It's only when you're raging rampant that your body feels something, and now we rush up to the therapist, but the wheels are falling off too late. So this is why we have to see the mind before it hits the body, which is why we have to get some concentration, which is why we have to understand this analysis of the Buddhas about the character of these mental states of mind. We have sensory and we have mental, and we conflate them. We completely confuse them. And this is one of our major mistakes, you know, which is why we leave things until too late. Until, you know, we have to wait till the body feels something before we know we have a feeling, you know. It's just ridiculous. So emotions, as we call them, you see a person angry, they're shouting. You hear sounds, spit coming out the mouth, tears coming out their eyes. That's the only way we know they're angry. If a person's quiet, we can't tell they're angry because we can't see their mind. If a person's lying in bed depressed, we can see they're depressed, but you can't see that beforehand. And we can't see it either ourselves. This is our problem. So we have to get to see the mind sooner. So we have to first have the analysis of these states of mind. So what's the function of the body? Well, there's the five senses. Eye consciousness can only see shape and color, nothing else. Tactile can only feel certain rough and smooth. Ears can only see certain kinds of sounds. They're profoundly limited in their capacity for cognition. Because our sensory consciousness and our physical body are intimately connected to our mental consciousness, especially if you look at the Vajrayana model, which is very helpful. It's a Tibetan medical system, similar to the Chinese. We have this subtle nervous system, 72,000 subtle channels, through which are coursing all these wind energies, prana. This is the major basis of the health of this medical system. And as Lama Zopa says, as they say in the Vajrayana, all our states of mind, our mental states, love, compassion, intelligence, anger, jealousy, pride, are all linked to their own set of the wind elements, wind energy. So they're coursing throughout 72,000 subtle channels. So as Lama Zopa says, when you're angry, when your mind is angry, first of all, karmically, you're programming your mind with more tendencies to be more angry, but it impacts upon your wind energies and causes this kind of storm, you know. When you're angry, it's like a big storm inside you, isn't it? That's because the winds have gone berserk, impacted by your anger. But also it leaves long-term results as well, which is future sickness and so on, because your winds are what cause sickness. And winds are the substance of the basis of your health. So the mind and body are intimately connected, but we confuse them, we conflate them in our culture. We don't make a distinction because we don't even think there's a thing called a consciousness. We just think there's a brain. So our analysis confuses us. If we want to understand the Buddhist, we've got to put it aside and try and understand the Buddhist one. So you've got mental consciousness. And you've got neurotic, deluded, eye-based, fear-based, crazy ones that are distorted, embellish, aren't in touch with reality and cause suffering. And then you have the valid ones, the second category, love, compassion, intelligence, kindness. These are the positive states of mind. These are at the core of our being, and these are the source of happiness. But we mix them together. We can't tell one difference from another. We can't tell one bit from another. That's our trouble, because there's 1,000 thoughts a second, just raging on, uncontrolled, like a river underneath, flowing along. And we only notice them when they come raging to the surface. So the two different functions, they cause suffering, they're disturbing. The very having of anger is disturbing. The very having of depression is unbearably painful. And when we identify the state of mind called aversion, the expression of which is depression at a very subtle, at a very internal level, or the expression of which is volatile anger at the other end of the spectrum, it's a state of mind, it's a mental conscious. And what it is a conceptual story. It's an interpretation. It is a viewpoint. All mental states at the level we function are viewpoints. Anger is a viewpoint. That the sound of the feet on my ceiling clomping is a viewpoint. You call it wrong, bad. It is a viewpoint. It is an opinion. And not only is it an opinion, it's bad, but it exaggerates the badness of it. So because it is an opinion, this is the key point in Buddhist psychology. Because we can see it's an opinion, equally, if I'm in love with Fred and I see him and I faint with joy, Fred is divine. That is an opinion. It is an opinion. It's a conceptual story. It's a series of thoughts. And if it's attachment, it's grotesquely exaggerating Fred's deliciousness. So of course, we don't think that attachment is an opinion, and we don't think that aversion is an opinion. We think that we not only think we don't think they're an opinion, we know we've got them. We know that things appear ugly or beautiful to us, but we think the thing is ugly. The feet on the ceiling are ugly in itself, in and on itself. The feet in their nature clomping on my ceiling is ugly. We never think for a millisecond that I'm making it sound ugly. Not possible. And that's what we have to see what we're doing, that Buddha says. This is his analysis. It's a revelation, if we can understand it. So if we look at the implication of it, if those feet on my ceiling are bad, is an opinion, I can change my damned opinion. But we don't want to know about that. If I'm completely, profoundly depressed in bed, having had panic attacks and dramas because of terrible things in my life, we don't want to think that's an opinion. It's too painful for us because we want to somehow this is the irony and the sadness of ego grasping. As Lama Yeshe calls it, and this is so cruel sounding, it's self-pity me. The energy, the nature of all these delusions, the very character, the flavor, the taste is self-pity. The taste is poor me. The taste is it's not my fault. The taste is I didn't ask to get born. I'm allowed to be this way. This is the assumptions that drive, that are in the nature. This is the nature. This self-pity, this poor me, not fair, I can't help it, set in stone, is the character of the unhappy states of mind. And because when we hear this, we hear it as blame, as brutal, as blame, you're a bad person. No, Buddha's trying to point out why we suffer. He said we should be weeping with compassion for ourselves when we realize our depression is the cause of our suffering. Our anger is the cause of our suffering. Our jealousy is the cause of our suffering. And these jealousy and depression and anger are mental states combined with our body. Yep, they trigger the body, guaranteed. But they're not themselves the body. Anger itself is not the shouting and yelling. It's the consequence. Being inert in bed is not the depression itself. It's the consequence of aversion in the mind. And aversion is thwarted attachment. And attachment's there every millisecond. And there's this frantic, perky little junkie in there that is just desperate every second to only get the nice things. Or another more brutal way of putting it, it's the same, to only get what I want. So it's totally self-centered. I mean, this really feels awful to hear. Don't squirm, don't feel guilty. We should be delighted to hear why we're suffering and because it's causing us suffering. That's why the first level of practice, the wisdom wing, nothing to do with compassion yet. All the lamas we see in the literature, they don't frame it like we do. But this is the method of how to stop yourself suffering. But we hear it as blame, so we can't cope. It's too depressing for us, you know. But we should be weeping with compassion for ourselves when we hear the analysis of attachment, aversion, and all the other delusions, because these are why we suffer. These are what are breaking our heart. So until we own them as ours, fully with delight, own the depression, own the anger, own the jealousy, own the panic attack as mine, then you can begin to change it. Until then, it's always somebody else's fault. It's always not my fault. It's set in stone. It's not possible to change. What do you mean people plonking on my ceiling is good? What do you mean depression is good? What do you mean? You know, we can't hear it. It's too hard. It's too hard. You know? So at first, we've got to take ourselves at our own pace as well. At the very first level of practice, which is the victim mode, and all of us, before we start practicing, we are all in our nature victims. That means separate, lonely, bereft, concrete, fear-based, panic-stricken, hopeless, someone made me, it's not my fault, didn't ask to get born. That's the normal way we all are. So we begin to listen, let's say, to Buddha's views, and we start to shift. Well, at that level, you've got to be cautious. If you've got a very volatile, angry mind, you've got to keep away from people who make you angry, not because you blame them, because you can't control yourself, and that's reasonable. If you get easily anxious when something happens, keep yourself away from that condition. At this level of practice, conditions are very powerful to try and have control over. It's very important to keep away from the people who make you angry. It's important to keep, like it's important to keep away from alcohol if you're attached to it, for God's sake. No one on the planet would expect you to give up attachment to alcohol while you continue to drink alcohol. Well, don't expect yourself to stop being angry if you're in the midst of people who make you angry. I know that vividly as a child. I use this example. It's very powerful. We don't sort of join the dots, you know. We're a big family, 7 children. Very volatile, lots of dramas. Daddy did certain things that were naughty and, you know, disaster, no money, difficulties, fights and dramas every day. Big dramas, you know, join the universe. We were poor, so we didn't have enough beds, so we shared beds. Well, there's 7 little volatile people, one brother and 6 sisters, and we're all volatile. So my brother's fairly low key. It's kind of interesting. He came at the end of the 7. He's kind of fairly stable looking. We're very volatile, all of us. So lots of shouting and yelling, and all our own ways of dealing with the dramas of daily life, So mine was anger. Well, I was a bully. I was mean to my sisters. I would shout out. I would lash out, because the memory I have is in myself, if I was even noticing what I was thinking, I just felt suffocated, overwhelmed, suffocated, by other people, by other people's things. We had to rotate in beds and share beds with each other. Well, 2 of my sisters got asthma. I was so mean to them. I put the pillow on their head. I couldn't sleep. I was going crazy. Of course, I was mean when I was crazy. It's not fair. So I was really volatile. At some point when I was 11 or 12, I was very naughty, wearing high heels up and down the main street in Murrumbina where I lived, trying to seduce the greengrocer's son. My mum freaked out and sent me to boarding school, sent me to live at school where I was already studying, the Catholic convent. Well, what happened is this. Overnight, I turned into a saint. Because suddenly the simple difference is this: my mind was exactly the same mind, but in that chaotic environment, because of my nature, I was always expressing anger and craziness and violence and not just that, but other things too. But I was volatile because the conditions triggered it, not blaming them. As soon as mummy sent me to boarding school, I had my own bed. There was structure, there was discipline. I went to mass every day. I studied every day. I passed my exams for the first time in my life because the condition changed. So what happened was the other parts of Robina, which didn't come out in the family, came out at school. My intelligence, my kindness, my determination, my spiritual aspirations, all they were given life. So conditions, which we think are everything in our culture, are huge. Never doubt they play a role. So the first level of practice where we're controlling our body and speech, that's where we're very intelligent and we keep distant from conditions that will make us crazy. It's intelligent to do that. It's a profound level of self-respect. Then we have the luxury now to get to high school to work on the mind itself, where we can own them now. We can begin to own the attachment, the anger, the jealousy, the craziness, It's such a reasonable, logical progression, this approach to practice that's presented in the Lama. So the key thing of the function of these unhappy states of mind is they cause us pain. They cause us, and then because they embellish, that's how they lie. They're delusions. That word in English is great. They cause us to be delusional. So again, the extent to which attachment's running in the mind, the extent to which I've got my attachment glasses on. When I get the object that attachment likes, it'll appear extremely delicious. And the more the attachment, the more the emotional hunger, the more the vampire-like hunger to get that object. When it does get the object, the more divine the object will appear. And this is from the connection. So I find this very helpful, like the technology of how the relationship between karma and the mind when we get born, and why in daily life it's so hard to change our minds. So for example, let's say you've got a tendency to kill, let's say fish. Well, the Buddha would say you brought that habit with you from past life. So it's imprinted in your mind. And like a miracle, eventually the results of the past karma have run out. The lower realm suffering has run out. You get born in this life like a miracle to a human mummy. You won the lottery due to non-killing. But you haven't purified all aspects of that killing. So you wake up in this life with the residual results of killing. And this first one is the main one, which is the tragedy, which is the one we're describing here, the habit to kill. You haven't purified that part. That's why you've got to live in vows and you've got to purify every day. That's what purifies these habits, the residual results of the main karma of killing. But you wake up in this life, you've exhausted the main results, lower realms. Now you wake up in this life in a human mummy with a good life and good things, but you've still got a tendency to kill. So what happens is this. When you eventually meet the condition called fishing, you won't start killing fish until you meet the bloody fish. It's obvious. So when that tendency to kill is latent. That tendency to kill is there, it's latent until it meets the condition. That's why when I went to boarding school, there was no condition that triggered my anger. So my poor little anger could go to sleep for a while. What a relief. So my virtue was popped up instead, So when this little boy, let's say the little boy, who you are, little girl, whatever it is, and you meet fishing for the first time, this is like this roughly. What happens is this. it's like it triggers the memory, because nothing goes astray. The Buddha would say, you know, karmically, we sow seeds in the mind for everything we do. That's like a qualitative result. But the other one is everything we think and do and say, nothing goes astray. Everything's stored there. So this tendency to kill is stored, it's latent. We meet, as a little boy, you meet the condition that instantly triggers, like it's like the memory of it. It's like it's almost like you remember. You don't think of it as remembering because we don't have view of reincarnation in our culture. But suddenly, what happens is because of the habit, you meet the condition and instantaneously you feel pleasure. We've got to understand this one. There's a third category of states of mind. We've got the neurotic, deluded, ridiculous, fear-based nonsense ones, which you can get rid of. They're the source of our suffering. You've got the lovely, delicious, wonderful, valid, reasonable states of mind that are the source of our happiness, that are valid, that are not embellishments. And then you've got the third category. I like to call those the mechanics. Intention, attention, discrimination, good memory. There's many of these. And whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need these to function properly. So they're not virtuous or non-virtuous in their nature. That's a very specific understanding in Buddhist psychology. So in this category also you have one that's called feeling, but not the way we think of, like an emotion. In the Buddha's view, in this Buddha's analysis of who we are and how we exist, how we function, we have precisely three kinds of feelings: pleasant feeling, unpleasant, and neutral. Well, forget the neutral, please. Forget those for now. Who cares? We know in our life, all we want is pleasant feelings. And that's another word for happiness. And there's a spectrum, isn't there? All the way from mildly pleasant to the most intense rapture. They're all on the spectrum of what's called pleasant feelings. Pleasant feelings, okay? The other kind are called unpleasant feelings, and they're on the spectrum of the most mild unpleasant to the most intense agony. They're called unpleasant feelings, and there's another word for suffering, okay? So this is the tragedy here. There's this person, little child, let's say she meets fishing for the first time. She has never heard of, she doesn't have any memory of a past life. She's never thought of fishing until now. Suddenly the scenario pops up, and instantaneously, quicker than Google, instantaneously, because of the strength of her past habit, which is triggered as a karmic seed, it instantly right there triggers pleasure. And the more strong the habit, the more intense the pleasure. Now, guess what? We all want pleasure. So what kicks in then in the next millisecond is what's called attachment. Now that's in the negative category, and that's the interpreter. That's the analysis. And attachment is also a hungry vampire that is only wanting those pleasant feelings. Suddenly pleasant feelings come. So suddenly what attachment will do, all this happens in like a millisecond, almost like virtually together. That attachment paints a picture of the fishing as the most divine thing in the universe. Why? Because the pleasant feeling came, and so the mind completely loses the plot. Attachment kicks in, makes the fishing look divine, causes you to only see lovely things because it brings the pleasure. So we conflate pleasure and for example, pleasure and attachment, but they're completely separate states of mind. But we don't have the analysis to see because we're not so subtle. But we have to understand it first theoretically. So naturally, because we're all junkies for pleasure, the millisecond that pleasure comes, the interpretation will be that fishing must be the cause of it. It seemed pretty obvious. The second he met fishing, he got pleasure. Oh, fishing must be the cause. So what? And then attachment makes it look divine. And then, of course, all you think about is fishing day and night. And all you want to do is keep fishing. Why? Because you want those pleasant feelings. It is logical. Now, we might want to not kill fish, but look at how we are with the pathetic eating too much cake. Eye consciousness sees that shape and color. Attachment interprets it as the most delicious thing. Ego grasping interprets it as inherently delicious. And instantaneously, all this is quicker than Google, then naturally pleasure is triggered. The second the cake meets even the eye consciousness, you get excited, not to mention the tongue consciousness. So the pleasant feeling comes. The logic as far as the delusions are concerned is that cake must cause pleasant feelings. And then attachment kicks in and makes it look divine. And then all the drama happens. We are living like this. And this is what keeps us bound in samsara, and all of these are mistaken interpretations, and this is happening completely spontaneously. We've got it down to perfection because we've practiced this for so long. And the tragedy is, the stronger the habit to do that action, the more delicious the experience of happiness. So I remember reading about one man who was an Australian journalist years ago. He was the arts writer for the Time magazine, that American magazine. Robert Hughes. He's a good writer. He wrote many books about Australian history. A wonderful man. He said, he was a fisherman, and he said he talked about when he first went trout fishing, he said it was like something like a cosmic experience. What that literally means, he must have had such strong habit to kill. The stronger the habit, the more you're attracted to the object, and the more divine the feeling of pleasure. This is the tragedy. This is the tragedy. And then attachment kicks in, and then we interpret it as good. And that means you're as blind as a bat. So all those years, this mother of this fisherman boy, I always quote this story, she didn't like the idea that her son killed fish. She didn't criticize him. And he always would ask her to come fishing with him. And she never wanted to go. And one time she went fishing. So of course, there she is with no tendency to kill. Therefore, no embellishment happening in her mind. She's seeing more reality there. She's not seeing a lie. You see, he, with attachment, because he had good feelings, and you feel very nice. So attachment writes this very buoyant, lovely, perky story. Fishing is divine. He sees the wonderful weather. He has the good feelings. He thinks it's delicious. He sees the fish in his boat. They're all flapping. He never literally ever saw suffering for 1 second. He's an intelligent, lovely human being. But because of attachment, he was as blind as a bat. So because attachment grotesquely exaggerated, embellished the deliciousness of that object, that event, which is called killing fish. And of course he called it good. Of course it looked good, it looked divine to him. And that meant he couldn't see the suffering fish. He knew they were sentient beings, but he couldn't join the dots. He couldn't see suffering. She didn't have attachment to killing. So of course she saw suffering. It was naked. She could see that she had empathy. This is how we all suffer. This is how we are in samsara. This is why we're all as blind as bats. And this is why attachment, the honey-covered razor blade, looks so benign. No one criticizes fishermen. They don't hate fish. They love fish, but they can't see the suffering. And we are all the same. I'm not trying to isolate poor fishermen. We're all the same. We're all the same. Because attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of the object. Ego grasping sets it in stone. Aversion exaggerates the ugliness of, let's say, the feet on the ceiling. So it's very logical to see if it's true, you can call fishing good. You can change your interpretation to call it bad. So if that's the case, you can change your interpretation of feet on your ceiling, which is bad, to something good. It's logical we can change our interpretations, but we just don't want to do it because we're attached to our views. Isn't that trouble? This is our trouble, you see. This is a tough analysis because it means this is all the work we do in our mind. This doesn't mean COVID-19 is nice on a relative level. It doesn't mean it's good to lose your job. It doesn't mean it's good to your husband leaves you. On a relative level, these are facts and they're painful. Buddha's got his analysis of why they happen. That's called karma. But we begin to grow when we start taking responsibility for what's in our mind. They're my states of mind. They're my interpretations, and they exaggerate. Now, the virtues don't exaggerate. This is very fascinating. They see reality. And the more strongly our mind is caught up in virtue, the more love is in our mind. That's under the virtue heading. And love is a delight in the happiness of others. The more strongly you have love, you have empathy, and you are connected to others. And that brings joy. How marvelous. So now I think you better ask me some questions. It's 1 whole hour, nearly an hour I haven't stopped. So ask me some questions now about this analysis of the mind, or anything you like for that matter. I don't mind.
So please unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
And put your hand up or shout at me.
Yes, you can put your hand up.
Hello.
Hang on, let me just get you. I'll grab you. Go, darling.
Hi, Robina. Hi. My question is this.
I can't, all I can do is see myself. I want to see you.
I can see you.
I
don't want to see myself.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine, darling. Then you don't have to see yourself. So talk to me.
Okay. So my question is this. Say when you think you can see, say in a person, the positive aspects and the sort of, if you like, the negative one or the defects, and you think, okay, I can see both, but I still love this person. I want to be with this person. Is this still being deluded and the attachment is so much that you still choose?
No, that's a really good question. Who's asking the question? Is that Laura?
Laura, yeah.
I can see you. Good. No, Laura, it's a really good question. And that's part of the process. So let's say in the first level of before we even begin practicing, I'm just calling it this. That's like the victim mode. How dare this person do this to me? He's a creep. I hate him. In other words, the aversion is taking over, and aversion is definitely pointing out the faults of this person. And those faults might even be true. Do you see what I'm saying? But what aversion does is exaggerate the faults, and you make the whole person appears as ugly. We know that, don't we?
Yeah.
But now you begin to practice and you realize it's not just the bad faults. There are some qualities, there are some bad things there. So now this is where you start to get intelligent. You have to recognize, indeed, this person has faults, but now it's up to you. First of all, you've got to really get a sense, well, is this worthwhile? Is there something in this relationship that is worthwhile for me persevering? You've got to make a decision. Is it worthwhile? Am I in for the long haul? Am I prepared to stay here? And that is all dependent on your ability. So if you're full of attachment and you've got, let's say you've got an abusive husband or an abusive boss, either relationship, it doesn't matter. And you're a good girl, you're trying to make everyone happy and people walk over you and people abuse you. And there's no sense of responsibility. You're not seeing things accurately and you don't realize why you're being harmed by others. And you keep saying, oh, they're really nice people after all. He really does love me. And he punches you again. Oh, he really does love me. And eventually you lose the plot completely because you're not being aware of your mind. That's when attachment is over-exaggerating his good qualities when he's blatantly he's being very abusive. That's foolish. Yeah. You've got to be more realistic and go, okay, maybe there's something in this relationship. Maybe that job is worthwhile. I've got no options right now, but maybe there's something in this job or in this relationship that I can learn from. This is the wisdom wing. Maybe this is good for me right now. I can develop my qualities. I can learn to become more self-respectful because there's something worthwhile in this relationship. There's something worthwhile in this job. And that includes seeing their failings. And then you're prepared to accept them. But it's up to you. It's up to you to know what you can handle. But let's say you're really fragile. You can't cope with the unhappiness. You can't cope with the abusive boss. You've got to then take responsibility to think, okay, I can't handle this. Don't blame them, but I'm going to leave the job. So it's up to you to be realistic, to see the person accurately, not through the lenses only of anger and not through the lens only of attachment, to be more realistic and to recognize there's something worthwhile here and that you can grow from this relationship as well as be compassionate. You've got to know yourself well. You've got to know yourself well. That's the key. You get my point?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good, Laura. Anyone else? Any other questions, people?
Hi.
Hello, Nana. Nana, are you?
Yeah, that's me. Hi.
Talk to me.
I have a very simple question. I was saving it for 2 weeks.
Sorry, you what? You what, darling?
I had a simple question about the refuge. Could you please talk about the refuge and maybe something in between the refuge and being in the moment, like, being aware, like constantly aware?
They seem like two completely separate questions. What do you mean by refuge?
Okay. Well, it's one question because I have been heard recently from the Tara Brach that whenever we take refuge, then refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, it's in a way a refuge in a present moment. And then I've been reading some Lama Yeshe, and he was saying about, now I'm starting nervous and forget things.
Don't worry, darling, it's okay, go on. It's good, keep talking.
Whenever we're taking refuge, we're taking a refuge in our inner Buddha.
I understand. Okay. And so I think, the way that you just quoted before, and then what Lama is saying, are very kind of general, very kind of spacious ways of presenting things. But if you want to look technically at what it means, taking refuge technically means at a certain point in your interest in Buddhism, you make a decision. This is good. This is for me. I want to formalize my commitment to being a Buddhist. And what that means, as you know, technically, you look into the Buddha, you look into the Buddha's teachings, you look into the understanding of the spiritual community. And these are the three components, if you like, the things that you will rely upon in your decision to then become your own Buddha. So that's technically what you're doing. So what Lama is trying to do in a very general way is show you the benefit. If you rely upon some good medicine and rely upon a good doctor, that's going to be what will bring the good results. That's a very general way he's saying it. And the one of being in the moment, that's a really general way of saying it. So really, darling, it's much more down to earth than that in one sense. So refuge is you make a decision that this path is for you, and you commit yourself. You commit yourself to practicing Buddhism and relying upon the teachings. Do you understand? That's the meaning of refuge. So slowly, slowly, as we practice, what real practice is, as I'm implying a little bit here when we talk about the mind, the more we understand, and this is quite sophisticated, really. The more we understand the way the mind works, using the Buddha's analysis of it, the more we understand the suffering of the attachment and the anger and the fears, which completely cause us to live in la-la land, which causes us to think about the past and the future, that causes that prevent us from being in touch with what's happening moment by moment, then we're really mentally suffering. We're really having a problem. So as you work on your mind, as you become more down to earth, you become more reasonable, become more realistic. So literally then you're gradually becoming more in touch with what's happening moment by moment. That's a consequence of it. It's long term, but that's a consequence. You would definitely say that. You have less fear, you have less dramas, you have less anticipation, you have less expectations, you be more on the planet, more on the earth, dealing with your life as things come. That would be the consequence of practice. You with me now? A little bit?
Yes, I'm with you.
Good, darling. That's enough.
Now we have a question from
No, wait a
Nicole
minute. Nana hasn't finished. What are you
she's
saying?
not finished. Okay,
No,
sorry.
no, sorry. 1 second.
Yeah,
What are you saying?
Okay, well then I still have a doubt about what about this inner Buddha? I mean, it's still there. It's still there.
No, darling, okay. It's just the way they say it, sweetheart. It's like if you're beginning to play tennis, then what the tennis player is telling you, the teacher's saying, you've got to try and contact your inner tennis player, your inner Federer. Let's say you really want to be like Federer. Do you understand? You know who Federer is? The tennis player. Darling, are you communicating with me? What I'm trying to say. If you're beginning to play tennis, it's very inspiring to go to the tennis matches or watch a tennis match and you watch the experts play. And what your coach is telling you, you've got to learn to get in touch with your inner Federer. That's the real tennis player that is you, but you're not it yet. It's your potential. So it's good to remember our potential. That's what Lama Yeshe is saying.
I got it.
Do you see my point?
Yeah.
What happens is that we're so overwhelmed. You're only in grade 1 tennis and you're so overwhelmed by I'm hopeless, I can't play tennis, I'm no good, I'm a disaster, which is what happens when we start to practice looking into our minds. Then it's good to remember your potential. It's good to remember the Buddha, what you can become, what you're trying to become. It's good to remember this marvelous tennis player that you're going to become. It gives you courage and optimism to not give up. That's the point. That's what Lama's saying. You understand?
I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Robina. Yes, totally. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
Go, Rona.
Yes, so now we have a question from Nicole Coulomb. Nicole, do you want to ask your question now?
Yes, thank you. Hi,
Can you
Robina.
hear me?
Hello, darling.
Hello.
Yes.
It's just a very simple question about my mum, who's 86, is getting very depressed because she can't see any future where she can get outside. And
yes. She's on her own, is she?
well, worse than that, she's with my oldest sister who's schizophrenic and is making her life hell. And
Darling,
and her little cat is also dying because it's really old.
Darling. So what can you see? The thing is, this is a very interesting point, We're talking here about what we can do on our own mind. This is the wisdom wing. But when you've got someone else who you really can see who can't do much on their own mind, all we can do is practice a compassion wing. So all you can do is think of what can I do for her? So what can you literally do? Can you speak on the phone to her? Do you see her on FaceTime? Or that's all you can do, and love her. I mean, all you can do is this. There's nothing more. You can't give her lectures about what she should do. You just got to be there like a rock of Gibraltar, give her as much courage as possible, tell her everything's okay, tell her you're doing a great job, Mum. I can't imagine you're suffering. It must be so difficult. Buoy her up, give her optimism, give her love, give her practical advice too, but be there like a rock, because we know ourselves when things go wrong, we are desperate to turn to somebody, aren't we? We're frantic to rely upon somebody. So that's you just have to be there like a rock for her and love her and give her courage. Say, everything's fine, Mum. It really is okay. Let blah, blah, blah. Just got to give her confidence. Honestly, there's nothing more you can do. Maybe you can play mantras for her. Maybe in behind quietly while you're playing and talking to her, you can have medicine Buddha mantra. Very subtle, very quiet. This can bless her mind. Even let her play things if you've got an iPad or she's got a computer. Does she look on the computer and things?
No, unfortunately, she's not. So she's not on social media or anything. It's just phone calls, and I do her shopping, so I drop her shopping off and see her you know,
So you
in
can't
the
give her an
doorway.
iPad or something and go on to, can't she have internet? And she can play mantras, she can read the news and things. She's got nothing like that? Nothing that she can look.
TV, she's got a TV, but it's not an internet TV, so she
can't
watches.
control it. She can't control it. Well,
No.
maybe there's a practical thing you can give her, and you can get her to watch. You can show some nice movies she can watch that'll lift her up. Maybe because she has to control what she watches. Can't you do that for her?
Yeah. No, I am trying to do that sort of thing. Give her books to read, DVDs.
Too difficult. DVDs, yes, definitely. Or even mantras and things, so she can listen to say, Mum, there's a lovely mantra. A lovely sound. It's a spiritual music, Mum. She doesn't have to know it's Buddhist or Timbuktu. And the sound of that can bless her mind at quite a subtle level. There's a lot. This is the best you can do. Give her as many tools as you've got and just be there like a rock for her, loving her. Loving her. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
And even though you can't guarantee she's suddenly going to get happy, you can't do that. And don't you get depressed because of it. Just do what you can.
Okay, thank you. That's really
All right,
helpful.
Thanks,
Thank
Nicole.
you.
But be creative. Be creative and let her have control over what she watches. Stupid old television. You've got no control. You sit there like a peanut and just get absorbed by this rubbish, But give her nice things to listen, especially lovely prayers and lovely pleasing sounds of music if she likes. That can be very beneficial for calming her mind down, It can be good for your sister as well. And for the pussycat.
Yeah.
All of them. Do you understand?
I do. That's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good. Now we have a question from Keith McGuinness. Keith.
Hello, Keith. Where are you, darling?
Hello, Keith. Okay, I'll read the question out.
Okay. And Rebecca has a question too. Go on.
I constantly catastrophize.
And
it's causing me serious anxiety. What can I do about that?
Well, that's what we've been talking about. I've been raving on about that's what we do. And this is where, it's easy to say these words, but we have to know it's possible. Who was it? Keith, right? We have to know, Keith, it's possible. That's exactly what you're saying. That's the word we use in the modern world. That's what Buddha's saying. We embellish. Catastrophize means we make things worse than they are. Instead of my feeling is it's bad enough that things are bad. It's bad enough that things are bad, but we make them badder, And that is a tendency, and it's very powerful. And at least you're seeing it. So, darling, it's not going to be magic overnight. Suddenly go, oh, well, it's not a catastrophe after all. It's an old habit that we all do this. So it's really just give yourself as many tools as you can to help you steady yourself. Maybe even just listening to mantras and pleasant things can calm your mind down. But also when you're in the midst of it all and you hear the story, you try to sort of argue with yourself. Your crazy catastrophizer is sitting in there, the embellisher's there. There's the wise Keith there, there's the intelligent Keith. And we've got to bring up those parts of ourselves to argue with all the crazies. It's the way I say it, So all you can do is that, but keep yourself steady, give yourself the best conditions as you can. Listen to mantras and things. That can be very powerful. Even read something that's optimistic that helps you lift yourself. It's not magic, it's not overnight, but the fundamental thing is to know that we can learn to change the mind. It's not easy, but it's possible. But also to be reasonable with the conditions you have. Make things that are pleasing to you. Listen to mantras. Don't listen to dramas all the time. Don't keep reading all the news all day and night. It'll make you completely crazy, It's not easy, Keith. It's not easy. But the key thing is to have the confidence to know it's possible. That's all I can say, Keith.
And now a question from Rebecca Smith. Rebecca?
Yes, Rebecca. Hello, sweetheart. Happy to hear about you. Where are you? Tell us your question.
Venerable Robina, I just wanted to confirm, is it beneficial to play mantras and recite mantras to sentient beings that are deaf, like specifically near the time of death?
It's a very interesting point, Rebecca, because the thing is, I think it has to be because there are so many stories. For example, so many stories about people who are in comas, unconscious, who can hear things. I know I've had the experience myself, and this is not uncommon, I'll explain. I know one retreat I did years and years ago when I first became a nun, it was a 3-month retreat, and we'd have a little nap, it was in India, Tushita, and we'd have a little nap at lunchtime. So at a certain period, because you're meditating all day, I'm not much of a meditator, but something has to happen if you're meditating 12 hours a day and you're purifying. So at some point, I was asleep, fast asleep, I'd have crystal clear dreams, what they call lucid dreaming, but I was completely conscious of all the sounds around me. I have so many examples of that. One friend of mine in Sydney was in the deepest coma in the ICU. They didn't even think she'd come out of it. And I would say mantras to her in her ear. I'd visit her at the ICU. And I'd also, every now and again, she was very close to Sakya Trinzen, and she was very close to Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, both their families. So I'd ask their students to pray for Judy, to get them to ask the lamas to pray for Judy. So I'd say to Judy every now and again in her ear, in this deep unconscious, Judy, Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche is praying for you. Judy, Sakya Trinzen's praying for you. And she came out of her coma and she said the only thing she remembered was this voice saying these words. So the subtle mind is capable, yes, of being conscious, even in a coma and even after you supposedly died. When you stop breathing, your subtle mind is now there. There's no indication of it using the model, the materialist model, but the subtle mind can still be super conscious. That's why it's so important to keep the room peaceful and quiet. So yes, the answer is definitely is absolutely worthwhile.
Thank you so much, Venerable Robina, and thank you for all these amazing teachings at this time.
Okay. Happy, darling. Happy, happy, happy. What else, Ronan?
Don't have any more questions at the moment. Anyone else with a question?
So, okay.
No.
No? Okay. Okay. So, hello, Ronnie. Happy to see you, sweetheart. You're in Israel? Are you in Israel? No. Okay, never mind. Whatever you are. Okay, darling. So listen, okay. Okay, so what's this got to do with, so, okay, embellishing. This is the delusions and as opposed to our virtues. They're mixed together like a big soup right now. So we have to start to listen more carefully to all these different conversations. That's why I like to call all my roommates. Got angry roommate, jealous, the catastrophizer, as Keith said, the exaggerations, the dramas. And the tragedy is, those are the voices that loom large in our head. It's kind of ridiculous, you know, and they crowd out all the other roommates. Love and compassion and wisdom and intelligence are also there, but they're hiding under the bed and in the cupboard and they're scared to come out. So we've got to bring them out very consciously. And it sounds dumb, a funny way to put it, but it's very true. When you're in the midst of catastrophizing, Keith, when we're in the midst of anxiety, that voice, that interpretation is so loud. We can't hear anything else. And we don't even know how to, we can't, you see, this is a crucial point. You can't make it go away. It's too loud, but you can bring in a virtuous, valid, sensible interpretation. And that'll sound very small first, but it can grow. So it's a very proactive practice to not just make the ugly ones go away, but to bring in the positive ones, and they gradually start to take over the house. It's a really powerful approach, but you've got to have courage to do that. Because once the anxiety and the exaggerators and all the dramas are there, we completely get dragged along by them, believing this is truth, this is reality, and we just get lost, you know. So we've got to know it isn't truth. It is not reality. It's happening, it's real, you feel it, but it's an over-exaggeration. It's over-exaggerating the badness. It's over-exaggerating. And we can bring in the sensible ones. And that's a major level of practice, consciously, actively having positive thoughts. And that's really, that's the key to it, you know. Always, I mean, I'm using this example all the time of this woman I know on death row who had this nightmarish experience. And, you know, her name is Sunny Jacobs. And she just had this classic nightmare experience of being wrongly accused of murder. On death row for years, husband was murdered. Even now, I just, you know, I know the woman now, you know, we're trying to support her in her work. And she, even when she talked about when she had the execution of her husband, his head went on fire. His head exploded in flames. Can you imagine? It took 20 minutes to die. I mean, you can conceive of the nightmare. Her parents were killed in a car accident. Her children were taken away. When her daughter heard about her father dying, she tried to kill herself. And there she is sitting in her own cell 23 hours a day with no contact with any human being. This is enough reason in the normal world to accept that she would go completely out of her brain. But her major point, and this is what's so moving, extreme examples are very good for us. She stayed sane, and not only did she stay sane, she actually became this marvelous, compassionate, wise, developed human being. Now she's out of prison, she's in Ireland, she's now old, and she's helping other people who are coming out of prison and helping many other people. I mean, this, when you have extreme examples like this, who aren't the Dalai Lama, who aren't all the holy beings on their pedestals, people like you and me, it shows it's possible. But oh my God, such intense hard work. And it's the mind. Nothing but the mind that she worked with. She said, they couldn't take my mind from me. This is the powerful point. And we have to remember this. And our courage in knowing this is the key to success. I can't tell you enough. That's the classic approach that Buddha, you know. It's the hardest job we'll ever do, but it's possible. Who else? Ask me some questions.
We've got one last question from Irina, I think. Irina, are you there?
Hello, Irina. There's Ruth.
Irina?
Good, sweetheart. Happy. Talk to me then.
I'll read her question out then.
Yes, come on.
Is nostalgia a negative or positive emotion? For example, reminiscing over past times, which brings some sadness in the present moment. Is that a negative state?
No, that's a really good point, isn't it? You know, I mean, we talk a lot about memories in this culture, don't we? We even talk about, I see that people even, and Apple uses this, I find it revolting really. You create new memories. It's so bizarre that you go somewhere to the beach so you can create a memory. I mean, it's very kind of weird, but nevertheless, it can be a massive disease called attachment. So we live in the past and, oh, those lovely times. And then when I was young and everything was so perfect, if only I had it now, you'll drive yourself to insanity doing that. So reminiscing and all between my family, the 7 siblings, we meet on Facebook sometimes, FaceTime. And we remember past things, and it can be very uplifting and very joyful and very optimistic. Like you think about your parents and you forgive them for what they did, and you think about the good things you learned. It can be very powerful to reminisce, but you've got to make it that, not just launch into misery and self-pity and depression. That's really demented. So it's all a question of which state of mind you want to prevail in your interpretation of those past memories. And if it's productive and useful, then it's fantastic. If it lifts you up and you become more wise and compassionate, then it's a fantastic thing to do. But often it becomes very depressing. We look in the past, because the past always looks, you know, sometimes worse than it really was or better than it really was, which is attachment and anger talking. So we've got to be very skillful. Do you understand? I'm sure you do. What else, darlings? What time we finish? It's 30, isn't it? Okay. Good, Irina. Good, sweetheart. So let's do a little meditation just before we finish. A little contemplation. Shall we do that? We'll do that anyway. So let's just do a tiny baby one of Tara, a really short one. Tara is in the Vajrayana. She's the manifestation of this action energy of the Buddha. Buddha's got a Buddha, an enlightened being, enlightened energy, has wisdom, compassion, and then the power to act. So you've got to have the wisdom that sees how to help others. You've got to have the compassion that wants to help others, but then you've got to have the ability to do it. And that's this action energy. And we all need that badly. That's confidence, optimism, courage, success, cut through the obstacles, make things happen. We need that badly, you know. So let's just do a little tiny baby, good on you, Keith, a little tiny baby meditation on Tara, representing this quality. So these different Buddhas, we can't talk about it much now. We'll maybe go into detail another time. They're like manifestations of different qualities we're trying to cultivate. So it's like a mirror image. So just imagine, be very natural, just close your eyes and just use our creative imagination, okay? So if you're familiar with this Buddha, then fine. If not, don't worry. Just imagine in front of us this radiant green light. It's a female form. She's sitting on a multicolored lotus. And if you know the details, great. And it's oneness with all the qualities of wisdom, compassion, and this action energy. And she particularly represents that. Trying to think, we all need that, you know, we all need that quality. So just if she's got a blissful face, very beautiful, very compassionate, very wise, we'll keep it very simple. If you can imagine, she's sitting cross-legged with her left leg crossed and her right leg is resting out or resting on another little multicolored lotus. And this shows she's ready to hop up to help others. These are like sort of mirror images of what we can think, our own potential, you know, like positive thinking. Everything's radiant light, very beautiful. And she's wearing, you know, she's holding, never mind what she's holding, just imagine this blissful being full of wisdom and compassion. So she sends from her brow, imagine this, she sends from her brow very powerful laser beams of white light that penetrate our brow and fill us completely with this radiant white light. And imagine what it does is completely purify all of our sickness, the heaviness of our body, our physical misery, and purifies all the imprints of all the harm we've ever done to any sentient being since beginningless time with our bodies. Even in this life, the few things we can think of we might have done to harm others with our bodies. Maybe we had an abortion, maybe we killed the fish, maybe we kicked the dog, maybe we killed the boyfriend. I mean, just, you know, whatever we've done with our bodies. Imagine all of this is completely purified, annihilated, all these karmic seeds, by this blissful white light filling us. Just imagine this. And again, this powerful white light coming from Buddhatara's brow. These white beams of light penetrate and fill us. And this time, what they do is activate our own, completely fill our body with kind of physical joy and fulfillment and ability to be of use to others and the ability to benefit all sentient beings, not harm them. Feel full of this marvelous potential. This is even so such that in this life, whoever sees you, hears you, tastes you, touches you, smells you, they'll benefit from your presence. Think about this, how amazing. May my body only benefit others, not harm them. Full of this blissful white light, this marvelous potential to be of benefit to others with our bodies. And then Buddhatara very compassionately sends from her throat radiant laser beams of red light that penetrate our throat and completely fill us. And this time, what this does is purify all the ridiculous nonsense of our ridiculous speech, the angry speech, the hurt speech, the resentful speech, the lying, the speculating, the harsh speech, the talking bad things behind backs, all of which harms us, forget about what it does to others. All of this ridiculous nonsense with our speech, all the harm we've ever done to sentient beings and therefore to ourselves with our speech, completely purified, full of this blissful red light. And again, Buddhatara happily sends these laser beams of red light from her throat to our throat, filling us completely. And this time, filling us with what else but our own amazing potential for marvelous speech. You think about in our lives, we need speech badly. It can benefit so many people. Just giving encouraging words to somebody is so much power. We need good speech, We need to be believed. We want people to trust us. We want to benefit others. So imagine full of this marvelous potential. They call it the power of speech, full of this blissful red light, such that any sound you say, even your laugh, even saying good morning, whatever you say, will benefit whoever hears you. This is incredible. Full of this marvelous potential, this power of speech, this red light. And now Buddhatara very compassionately sends from her heart, in the center of her chest, the heart chakra, she sends radiant beams of blue light, blue like the sky, that penetrate our heart and fill us completely. And what it does is instantly annihilate all the unhappy states of mind, the ego grasping that clings to the separate me, the attachment to get what that me wants, the panic when it doesn't, and all the other dramas, all of this stuff that is not at the core of our being. This is Buddha's amazing finding. It is not integral to who we are. So imagine it's completely gone, instantaneously. This blissful blue light, all the rubbish gone. How amazing. Again, Buddhatara so compassionately, this time sends the blue light, and this time filling us with all our potential. That's naturally what's left, If all the rubbish is gone, what is there left? This is the point. Well, empathy. love, compassion, intelligence, and guess what? Joy. Joy, this is what's so shocking. Joy, happiness, fulfillment, courage, joy is our natural state when all the rubbish is gone. This is Buddha's whole point. This is our natural state. It's amazing to imagine this, full of this blissful blue light, all our marvelous qualities. So one more time, what Buddha does now, what Tara does now, she sends the three lights together. The white to the brow, red to the throat, blue to the heart. And what you imagine is this is purifying even the subtlest imprints or tendencies of any of this nonsense. And we become, instantly we become our own Tara. We fully develop our own true nature, our own Buddhahood. Just imagine this, these three lights together, completely manifesting our own brilliant, perfect qualities, our wisdom, our compassion, our power, our ability to be of benefit to sentient beings, our true nature. These three coming together. White, red, blue. So now you imagine that her lotuses that she's sitting on and her right foot is resting on dissolve into her body. And then she comes very happily, green light body. She comes and sits above our head. This energy of Buddha, energy of Tara. Sits above our head, facing the same way as us. And then you imagine she delightedly dissolves into green light and absorbs through our crown. And you imagine that the energy of the Tara's body, speech, and mind completely merges with the energy of my body, speech, mind. Completely the same thing. Union, oneness, as Lama Yeshe would say. Completely one, totally merged. So now, for about a minute, just imagine expanding to fill the universe. Vast, blissful, clear, wise, compassionate, just pure energy expanding the universe, and no thoughts, no thoughts. Now we relax. Just again, just come back to the present and just think from this moment forward, my body, think this way. This is how bodhisattvas think. That this body of mine and this speech of mine, they're for the sake of others. Whoever sees me, whoever touches me, whoever smells me, tastes me, may they benefit from my presence. And then my mind, which is mine, may I watch it like a hawk every second, working on it, being my own therapist. And this is for my benefit. So that means you make every second of your day useful to others. Even though mostly now we're not seeing or contacting many people, but still the insects, the creatures, the animals, you know, have this wish for the sake of others and my sake. And we can just finish with that. We finish with the 40 measurable thoughts, okay? The amazing aspiration of the bodhisattvas. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, ignorance, and anger. May they abide so. I will make this happen. That's the brave attitude of the Bodhisattva, okay? So much courage. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness and its causes. May they have them. Please, Buddha Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberation's excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha Tara, bless me to be able to do this. Okay, sweethearts, that's it.